Hello, everybody. I'm Nine with Bread, and we're here with a special guest today. Jeremy, can you introduce yourself and explain who you are and what you've worked on?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Jeremy. I was the producer on Supreme Commander and Forged Alliance.
Awesome. Today, we just wanted to show you a little bit of Sanctuary and show you where we're at. Bread, can you?
Here we go. We've got a little slide screen. So essentially, what is our game? What is it all about? So it's a strategy game when we've got all these sort of features which we consider to be sort of core features. Here's a little bit of concept art. So, heaps of units. We got a thing, strategic zoom where you can zoom right in and zoom right out to see the whole map. Order queuing, we've got that going on. It's an RTS that's focused on the macro side of things rather than the micro side of things. It's not that clicky, and we make a lot of decisions to make sure that it's easy to play and things like that. It's simulated combat, so your projectiles, if it's shot out of a cannon, if it hits anything along the way, that's what it does. Your laser beams, if they hit on anything along the way, right? It's not like we try to put as little as possible on rails and simulate as much as we can. The economy is sort of a flow economy where you have things spent per second, right? And if you have all these different things costing different amounts, right, it's split evenly. It's not one of those buy first, right? There's two resources. You can salvage dead units and trees and things like that, right? And you can have all the builders build, and we've got commanders, right? And then you can upgrade them. We've got mod support already in the game, and we've got some map editing stuff going on, right? So we want to build a long legs kind of RTS, which really lasts for a long time, right? So 10 years, 20 years, who knows, right? Especially because, RTS, they do have long legs, right? They do turn.
You do?
So
Yep.
our game, it's set on a Dyson sphere, right? That's the sun. That's our sun inside the planet, right? And it's hollow on
That's
the
awesome.
inside, and it looks like this, right? So
Yeah.
um, right, it's artificial, and you just get these sort of cliffs which are made out of metal and stuff, and like ravines that you can't even see the bottom of it and stuff, right? And just these mega structures, and that's the units down there and forests and stuff, right? So
Nice.
the idea is that they've disassembled all the planets except Earth, right? And they built this thing out of the materials, right? And now, obviously, when you have a big shiny thing, you got to fight over it. So that's how it works. Um, so, then that's what it looks like in the game. So this is one of our factions that's
Nice.
just fighting another, where you see all these projectiles and things flying around, right? All the explosions are happening. And when you zoom out, right, you get your range rings, you get your heaps of units and sort of hundreds of units on the screen, strategic icons to help you see what's going on there, things like that. Right. And then, we've got some other things that we're sort of planning. So, how cool would it be if you destroy one of these mega structures that is on the surface of the sphere and it collapses down on the map, and then it fills up the ravines or a valley. It's blocked now with all the rubble, and you've got to like clear it or something, or nuke it even more to get rid of it and so on, right? And that's part of a kind of overall theme of having a more, let's say, active participation of the map itself in the game, right? In a lot of RTS, it's fairly static. It's kind of like a shape, but we want to, make it a bit more dynamic. And since it's an artificial planet, what better way than to let you ruin it all, break everything, right? So
That's awesome.
this is one of those weather stations. So the planet on the surface, the weather on the Dyson sphere is fully artificial. And so that means it's got all this air conditioning going on and stuff, right? And if you blow it up, it actually freezes the entire map because you broke the weather systems. And what that means is, all your ships are now stuck, right? And then your tanks can drive over the ice and they can attack the ships. But if the weather is restored, then all your like ice melts and the tanks, they sink into the sea, right?
That's awesome.
And why stop there? Obviously, because if you're gonna blow it up, then we're gonna blow it up. So with big enough weapons, you actually put holes into the map, right? And now like the topology itself is changed, right? Everything literally falls down into the sun below because that's what's on the inside, right? And now you've got a hole in your map, right? You've got to drive around it. It's different. Maybe there was a path that's no longer there because it's there's a hole, right? And so this stuff is in-game footage, right? We've got freezing sort of working in game as a prototype. Here's another like what we call shattering, right? That's it blowing the holes in there. So this is where there used to be a base, and now this whole valley is blocked off, right? You can't really go through it anymore.
And you can see some buildings there, actually. There's some
Yeah,
buildings.
yeah.
Yeah.
Leftover buildings, right? That's sort of the scale we're talking about,
That's
right?
awesome.
Everything
Yeah.
is modeled to scale. So, that's that's like 20 meters. So this is like a kilometer or something across, things like that, right? And
A
then
kilometer.
yeah, roughly.
No,
Plus minus one.
Kilometer.
Yeah, okay, yeah, fine, got me there. Kilometer, very good. Yeah. And next we got some factions. So we've got
Brett
3
does all the
factions
real
in our
work.
game.
I just do the dad jokes along the way. That's kind of the ultimate
Oh,
alliance.
come on. That's the
Yeah.
most valuable part of the team, you know it. Right. So we've got 3 factions in our game, and they're sort of split along what does intelligence even mean, right? So this is the EDA, they're the Earth Defense Alliance, and they're the guys who are sitting on Earth, right? Which got frozen because this Dyson sphere blocked all the sunlight from hitting the Earth. So they're sort of in an ice age, right? And the EDA is not happy about that, right? And they're humans, right? And they've got, this is actually the EDA commander. It's this floating kind of mobile battleship, and it's going to have all these missile launchers and stuff on it, and it's amazing, right? I made the EDA, so I'm obviously proud of them, right? So, and they've got all these kind of things, and aircraft and stuff. And the next faction is the Chosen, right? And these are actually post-humans. They've uploaded themselves into the virtual world. We're not allowed to say the Matrix because it's copyright, but I just said it, so whatever. And then yeah, so now, and they want to, like, they're not happy with the EDA because the EDA are like humans and they want to do like in the real things in the real world, but the Chosen, they live in this virtual world, and they say, well, actually that's as good as the real world. Let us use the Dyson sphere in order to like simulate reality instead of making it, right? And so there's this giant conflict over who is in control of Sanctuary, which is the name of this Dyson sphere, which is everybody is fighting over it. Because whoever controls that controls everything, because that's like the entire energy of the sun, right, is absorbed and all that. And
I like that.
Well, the post, well, we got a 3rd faction, just wait for that, right? So here are their units, right? This is actually one of the largest units in the game. We call it a T40 unit. We just increase the number every time we talk about it. And it's just so enormous because it's like we made it even more big than the T4 units, and things like that. So that's what they do.
At least,
right?
At least you're not making up a name like the Monkey Lord and getting stuck with it.
That's a good bit of trivia, though. I actually like that about Subcom. That's like a nice bit of soul.
It was literally just like, we didn't even know that was the name of the unit until we saw the PC Gamer article, and we had to go in the code and change it.
Which makes no sense. PC Gamer article.
It's got like literally nothing to do with the monkey.
Nothing at all. No, I think Chris just made it up on the spot. It was amazing.
Nice. Yeah. And finally, we got the Guard, right? So this faction are the robots that constructed the Dyson sphere, because that was the only way to make something so big. It's this self-replicating machine intelligence thing, right? And their job is to maintain the sphere, but because the EDA and the Chosen have been fighting each other so much and blowing up the Sanctuary so much, they've actually like some stuff happened and they've become disconnected from their network of like repair bots, and now they're fighting to preserve Sanctuary and pacify the other 2 factions, because they're like the kids that are messing up the sandpit, right? So right, and then they're just waking up to consciousness, like what even is consciousness, and my slides have gotten stuck for some reason. So there we go. Let's stop and start the presentation again.
So we've got humans versus these kind of not Matrix people, the Natrix people, and then we've got the robots.
Yeah, exactly right. And so these guys are just working out what is even consciousness in the first place. Humans are sort of, let's think about the real world. Chosen, let's actually like the virtual world is the best thing ever, right? And then the Guard are just like, crazy because they have their own ideas. Like one like node is like doing its own thing, the other one is like, no, we should actually pacify all the humans and put them in zoos. Right? The third one's like, actually, humans weren't part of the original design because it was designed to be a nature reserve, so they need to be taken off. Right?
That's awesome. So your
So-
fourth faction is literally just kind of removing, basically it's your antibodies for the
Well,
Dyson
well,
series.
that's what the
Interaction.
third faction is, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they disagree about the methods because you know,
Love it.
that's what it was,
That's a great
right?
idea.
So
Great idea.
yeah, so that's kind of the three factions, and that's sort of the story, right? They're fighting over control of the Dyson sphere, and whoever does that, right, whoever gains control over it, basically gains control over the future, right? So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's all these units, these aircraft. There's like some factories.
Glad the giant spiders are still around. Legged
Oh yeah,
units are
well
so
we couldn't go without giant spider. Yeah, this guy fires 2 laser beams because reasons.
Yeah, great. It's great unit design. This is awesome.
Yeah, glad you like it. So this was done by one of our artists. We've actually got 1 artist per faction, so which makes it easier to coordinate like cohesion within a faction, but then between factions they can be quite different from each other.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then we got some random stuff. So this is one of my favorite screenshots. So this is the level of detail on the left. And this is what 100,000 trees looks like on the right. And that's
A lot of
running at 70
trees.
frames a second. Yeah.
Nice.
Um,
God, I'm jealous. We never could have done that.
Yeah, the wonders of modern technology. So what happened here was,
good.
yeah, go on.
Oh no, it
It's
just looks great.
kind of-
Are you doing it where like the trees actually can catch fire and burn and all that as well?
We'll
We
get
haven't
there.
added that yet, but they do sway in the wind, right? And we're gonna
Love it.
let you like, you know, run over them and things like that, right? And
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, you'll be able to like, you know, when an explosion goes off, the trees will like you know, we worked out how to do it. So you'll have like wind forces, and if the wind forces are too strong, the trees fall over. But if it's not, they
Nice.
do the swaying, the wild swaying while that's happening.
Is it the
So
early game micro where you can reclaim to kickstart things off as well, bootstrap your economy?
yeah, you can. You know, we're gonna sort of, we're thinking about area commands, so you can just say, oh, you know, everything in this area, go get it, right?
That's awesome.
Rather than clicking on every tree at once, because that would be
Yeah, it's not
something. That
it's
would be a
not-
lot of clicking.
Not
Yeah,
in line with this genre.
Yeah, there's actually a funny story behind these trees. So this was when Unreal 5 came out, and you know, there was a video saying, oh, you can render 100,000 trees in one scene now in Unreal 5. And our technical artist said, well, I'm kind of skeptical about this whole thing. And then an hour and a half later, he shows this and a video of him like, we got 100,000 trees in our game
That's
too. Take that. Right, so great job with the team, right? Those guys are always good. Yeah, and then like here's what our maps look like. So that we have some tech which like makes it look as if the map just keeps going on forever. Like it just doesn't
Nice.
end. Just tiles it, right? There's a little bit of
Okay.
magic you can see at the bottom, right? And here's some more screenshots. This is like a concept art we're thinking, you know, you can have bridges over things, right? And then you can blow up the bridges, and then you can repair the bridges and stuff, right? And then all the units that would be on there would collapse. Then we got some naval units, that tank again. This is like some trees, like palm trees on one of our desert maps.
And the other
And
thing with the
stuff like
bridges
that.
is it would have crushing force, so anything underneath it would
Yeah.
get crushed by the bridge too. So it's
Squashed.
doing damage on top and below.
Yeah,
So
like
some new stuff
one
there.
thing that would be really cool with these is like, you know, if you had a river below, you could put ships and then the tanks go over the top. So yeah, and like we have some pretty cool map ideas because of this whole Dyson sphere aesthetic, where we can have essentially, you know, geologically sized buildings, right? Like a wall the size of a mountain or something like that. Right,
Nice.
we can sort of take that. And then this is what happened when we showed our game on PAX. That was like the crowds of people outside of our little store. This was in Australia in October last year. So yeah, I think Nine
Yeah.
was there, right?
We
He
had
was
some
there, and
really great feedback to that. We had one person crying, man. She was just crying about like how good it was to see a new, in her words, Supreme Commander game. And the words Subcom did come up a lot. So people basically fell into like two categories. Like one group of people, they just saw our game and they saw the strategic zoom, and they saw all the icons and stuff, and they're like, oh, that looks like a Supreme Commander game. That's so cool. And the other people had no idea what like Supreme Commander was, but they just saw strategic zoom for the first time, and they're like, wow, that is so cool. So like either way, we got like the really positive reaction.
So,
Just people love strat zoom, and that's it.
honestly, me and Chris did all the demos for Subcom and Forge Alliance, and I remember the exact thing that you're talking about, where we showed it off for the first time, and it was like we would zoom out a little bit, and then I think that first trailer we released way back when, and it was like it zoomed out a little bit, and it was a normal like, oh, it's an RTS zoom, and it zoomed out a little more, and you're like, oh, that's cool, and then a little more, and then the whole map, and yeah, people freaked out. It was awesome. I mean, it does change how you play the game. You talked earlier about how like macro versus micro, right? And
Yeah.
ours was even easier to show it because it was all THQ back then. And we were literally demoing next to Company of Heroes. So it was like one of the best micro RTSs and what we hoped would be one of the best macro RTSs right next to each other. So we could just point at each other's games to explain the difference. And it was awesome. Yeah.
Right. But you guys were so visionary. Like Subcom had so many features in it that were just different to other RTSs. I know TA had a whole bunch of that stuff, but just things like the flow
TA was
economy,
amazing.
reclaim, queuing orders, factories assisting other factories, and like the commanders in it and stuff. There were just so many things. It wasn't just like one or two things, because like before that I was just playing things like Command and Conquer, and RTSs were very similar to each other, but Subcom just came and added like 20 elements for me. It just took so many strides ahead. And, you know, as game designers, while we're adding things to our game, it almost seems like there's not too much to add on top of that recipe. There's things you could do, but you guys did so much.
You're building, right? I mean, even us, when we were working on Supreme Commander, like every day during lunch, we played Total Annihilation. And a third of the team worked on Total Annihilation, probably, like maybe not a third, but a lot. And then of course Chris, who is the visionary behind most of both. And then Brad came in and added his touch. A lot of the engineers came in from a technical point of view and pulled stuff off we never would have guessed was possible at the time. And then we got lucky. THQ was a good publisher. Like we had our exec producer on the THQ side was ex-Westwood, so he actually did work on the old Command and Conquer games and stuff. He was ex-Westwood, ex-Petroglyph. And he basically came in and was like, no, we've got our small scale, we're gonna hit, you know, the mass market with Company of Heroes. Y'all make the craziest RTS you can. And our publisher literally told us that. They said, we don't care. We don't care if it sells. We don't care. Like, just make the craziest RTS you can. And so the team, with the tech we had available, went nuts with it. It was awesome. It was seriously one of the most fun games I've ever worked on. And it feels like, you know, each iteration on this subgenre just adds to, like you said, we were adding to Total Annihilation, which was a freaking amazing game. Planetary Annihilation added stuff on top of Supreme Commander, made some changes and changed things around. And it looks like y'all are doing it even more so. So I'm just glad to see. It's my favorite subgenre of RTS. I'm old. My APM's not good enough to play StarCraft anymore as much as I would love to. I can still play macro RTSs.
Yeah.
Like it's a little easier to do so because it's not all about, like you said, clicking every single tree in the first 4 seconds.
Yeah.
It is more strategy based, and that strategy based stuff is, for me, ends up being a more fun game.
Exactly right. It becomes a more thoughtful game. It's not about how fast you can click. It's just about making good choices. We did have someone on the FAF forums recently. They're 81 still playing FAF.
So here's a cool part. Prepare. I don't know if you remember that name at all. He was the world's best Supreme Commander player when we first released. It was him and Blue Screen was the other name, and they would fight for first place over and over again. And we ended up meeting Prepare And turns out he had game design. Sorry, my dog. He had game design background. Like he had worked on Command and Conquer 3 and some other games. And he was living in Germany, and we actually flew him over, and he helped with the Forged Alliance balance task.
Right.
Before we brought him in, we brought Mike Moore in because they were both competitive gamers. And I ended up working with that guy 8 years later, still friends with him today. We talk weekly. Ended up being one of my best friends. But yeah, we met because he was the world's best Supreme Commander player.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, but it makes sense, right?
Nice.
Because
Yeah.
he understands the implications of all the balance
Yep.
decisions and stuff. So, who better to be involved in those decisions?
And he's been making video games ever since because of it. Yeah.
Well, cool. That's great. Is that
Yeah,
the end of the
that's a dream.
slides?
That's it. We're done. Yeah, that's we really flew through that one. Yeah,
Well,
This looks
let's
awesome.
ask questions and stuff.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions just from my own like
Yeah,
player
go.
standpoint. Adjacency bonuses or no adjacency bonuses?
Yes, adjacency bonuses. Yes. Like you would be surprised because I vaguely remember that I think you were partially responsible for putting them in to Supreme Commander.
I was, and I have a love-hate relationship with them.
Yeah.
Because it does min-max a base, and it kind of cuts back on pretty bases to an extent for those who are not hardcore players. But yeah, it was like you said, it was an addition. It changed things from TA and it made things a little better.
Yeah. We're doing a spin on that. We're doing our spin
Okay,
on that.
cool.
We're still having those things. It's not going to be exactly the same, right, as in other games. But yeah, we are having those because we find that there's an element, it's a gameplay decision, right? If you place your buildings next to each other, there's a benefit to that, but there's also a drawback to that because if they get bombed, the
Splash damage.
damage from the bomb, right, can hit both buildings and stuff. So it's up to you how you like decide to do these patterns and stuff. Yeah.
I'm assuming wreckage.
Mm-hmm.
In
can't
totally
have
in must have.
Excellent.
Yeah. I think yeah, that's actually one of the key parts of these kinds of RTSs, I feel, because like every RTS ever, right? Or like not even just RTS, but like crowd things, when you have the bigger pile of things, right? There's a snowball effect where they're more efficient at killing your enemy. And wreckage is a system of countering that because it actually benefits the guy who is like on the back foot because he can then benefit from that. And not only that, but it makes the map more dynamic where if you have a giant fight and all the aircraft fall down onto the ground, now that is an area to fight over. So it makes the map dynamic. It addresses a
adds heaps of
key
strategy.
issue, right? Key issue with snowballing. Like you have to address the snowballing problem somehow. So
That's awesome.
must have. Yeah. Best mechanic ever.
Flying units, giant, especially or T4 Aeon, right? Like it would crash and you'd actually use it as taking out bases when it was low on health. We actually didn't think about it that way. It wasn't until it went live that we saw people doing that. But are y'all looking at stuff like that?
Well, we do have something called a strategic carpet bomber in the unit roster. It's not made, but it's like the biggest B-52, I don't know, B-552 or whatever it will be, right? And it would just like you'll be able to like actually carpet a base, right, in one run.
But that's not what he's asking. He's asking about the fall damage.
Yeah, well, it was an accident. We didn't think about it either when we made it. We just did it because it was a simulation, so of course it had to have fall damage. And
well, it's it. Like, I mean, it would be ridiculous if it didn't. And that's the other defining characteristic of Subcom is it was quite realistic, right? Like, it seems like many decisions along the way were put in favor of just realism, and the graphics were realistic. It wasn't like cartoony or anything like that. And it still stands out. And in Subcom 2, it felt less realistic to me. It felt a little bit more neon.
Different.
Yeah.
Yeah, different team, very different feel. Chris was trying to make an RTS for consoles.
Yeah.
That would work on consoles. Whereas with Supreme Commander, we never had that in mind. Like it did get ported to console eventually, but it wasn't designed with that in mind.
Yeah, I imagine it was a tough journey because they had a much smaller budget than Subcom 1, right?
Yeah, SupCom 2's budget was much smaller. I have a gist
Yeah.
of what it was in my mind still. I actually didn't work on SupCom 2 until the very, very end. I came on just to help it out a little bit to get across the line.
That seems to
But it
happen a
was a
fair
good
bit with
team.
you. You're the fix-it
What's
guy.
that?
That happens. There's a bit of a pattern here where you get called in at the end of
Yeah, I
projects.
do tend to be a fix-it person.
Yeah.
Well, you
Although
fixed it up
like
quite well.
last gig was I got to build it from scratch. Like it was good, and I'm still working with a lot of these same people. Like one of the people we hired for Forged Alliance from DigiPen is a senior artist at the last place I worked. We hired him for that. Like I'm still working with probably 10 or 15 different Supreme Commander devs. It was a good team. Like I said, I've been making games 24 years, and that was probably the most fun game I've made, especially Forged Alliance.
Cool.
I'd argue it's the most fun game I've played. How about
Yeah.
It's awesome to hear. It's fun. I mean, it's cool. We see it on lists and stuff. I still talk to Brad Reeb. He's the lead designer.
Yeah.
I still talk to him every once in a while, and we send messages back and forth whenever it shows up on top of another best RTS list. I mean, it feels good. We set a goal using another IP. Basically, when we were making Forged Alliance, Brad and I talked, and the gist we told the team was like, this needs to be Brood Wars. Like you don't play at the time, you don't play StarCraft 1, you play Brood Wars. Because why would you not play Brood Wars? And so the goal of Forged Alliance was that. It was like we're making this expansion pack that's so good that there's zero reason that you would ever play plain Supreme Commander.
Yeah, well, mission successful. What can I say?
Like I said, it was an amazing team. Amazing team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Next question. What have you got?
Sure. So let me see here. This is amazing because it does like there's enough different here that I am trying to get my head around some of it, but it feels familiar enough. Like I can even, like I said, I can even already pick out the faction I'm gonna play, just based on screenshots because I'm assuming based on past games. The same as when we came out with SupCom, I played Cybran because I played Core. We based Cybran on Core. We even had a unit in Forged Alliance that we got put in because I loved the designers, and they made me a unit based on the can because that's my favorite Total Annihilation unit.
Nice.
It's probably my favorite RTS unit of all time. Just completely useless, just walks really slow and takes a ton of damage.
I didn't play TA. Which
is that the
was
brick?
that
Did the brick get named after
the brick?
Made after the can?
Yeah, the brick
there we
was
go.
The brick was my request of give me a version of the can.
It's a good unit.
So yeah, Total Annihilation was ARM and Core, and everyone played ARM because you could flash rush, and it was really hard to beat. And I hated it because I played Core. And then
nice.
We came out with Supreme Commander, and early on, we never thought about it, but early on you could T1 bot rush with UEF, and it was the exact same thing. Like you could show up within like 2 minutes with like 40 T1 bots and win. So games were lasting like 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's when we got we started deep diving on the balance and trying to get that fixed up to where the games would go a little longer.
And there's
the goal was
still
always, like, 30
balancing
minutes.
Forged Alliance on FAF.
What's that?
Like on FAF to this day, they're still balancing it. They tweak it all the time. And interestingly,
It's
FAF's
amazing.
still growing. The monthly active players for Forged Alliance is still growing to this day.
Yeah,
So-
it's like 2 times higher than what it was a few years ago.
Wow. And I'm assuming the meta is still changing, right? So like you're gonna have.
Well, they're doing their own things, yeah, and like back when I was more active in there, me and some of the guys, like the lead designer on our team, we played a lot of Forged Alliance with him, and we had this thing where we would find all of the ways you could abuse the latest patch. As soon as it was out, we found all of the things, and there was one time where they made the adjacency bonus too strong, and like if you built a unit and then you self-destructed it, it was cheaper, and then you reclaimed it. you got
Oh,
free
man.
money because the bonus was so strong that you could do it. And we just like the first day that's out, we were like, aha, the numbers add up, the stars align, and then you just built like 100 air factories, and because that was the highest drain per second, so you could get more money per second.
Brad, I
Just stuff
think
like that.
an interesting thing to talk about would be how the factions play differently and all the transmitters
Yeah,
and
that's
armor and all that
true.
sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So we've you know, you can't see it here, right? But there's like we're like doubling down on the diversity because we've got some balance experience with patching Forged Alliance after it was released. So we kind of tried out a few things. So we're putting in like an armor system for the EDA, for example, right? And it's kind of like we're trying to make the factions more different from each other. They'll have,
That's
you
great.
know, some like different footprints, like the Chosen were thinking they can upgrade their power generators, right? And stuff like that. There's a lot of ideas that we've got going on. One of them is that, so for example, we'll have like these little drones, like, you know, like quadcopter drones and stuff, and you'll be able to like shoot them down and stuff. And they will do various things. So some of them will fly out to the enemy and fly around them and attack them and stuff. But others, they will, for example, repair your units really efficiently. And so for the EDA, for example, all of their units have armor on them. And by all of their units, I mean all of them. So like the power generators, the shield
Oh, nice.
generators, the tanks, everything, right? Because like when we say, oh, you know, we want a player to have the tools available for them to be creative with their strategies, we mean it, right? Like, you know, you want to tank, you want to like tank with your power generator, do that, right? Like go for it. And so the Chosen, they've got a personal shield on every unit, and there's some mechanics which you can boost the shield regeneration on those and stuff like that. And the Guard, they've got like these transmitters and transmitter receivers where when you're inside the signal you get enhanced vision radius, right? And things like that. So each faction has like their own unique mechanic that only applies to their own units, right? And
Love
part
that.
of the reason why is because if you make the factions too different in a game where you can transfer units to your allies, what will happen is they'll mix all the best things, right? You get the best tank, the best shield, and that stuff. And what we've done is we've designed the mechanics in such a way that they play differently, but you can't really transfer these bonuses over to your allies, so you can't just mix them all up together and play. So it doesn't make sense. But if you've got these units, they're not useless, right? You can still you have all your guard units that your ally gave to you. They still function like tanks, but they just sort of don't stack with your own thing. So we're thinking about mechanics like that, which like are kind of intuitively stacking, right? So that's one thing we're putting in, right? And we're
That's
actually
amazing.
pretty excited about that, right? And
So you're gonna
then
have
so
it
for example,
basically instead of just different colored blocks, you're actually gonna be able to play it based on your play style.
Yeah. So you'll
Nice.
still be able to have a variety of different play styles with each faction. So, you know, if you want a turtle, like sit in your base and build all defenses, you can do that as any faction, but they do it differently. So, for example, the Chosen, they have these massive dome shields, right? They have all these shields. You know, you build a bunch of power generators. All of your units need them, right? So you're building a lot more power generators you too, but you can defend, right? With the EDA, their shields are actually like they're like soap bubbles, right? So they just they burst whenever they want, but every shield under the EDA, it cloaks your units underneath it. You can't see them
Oh,
through the
okay.
radar, right? So
Nice.
like the other factions can't do that, but the EDA can, right? So they've got the stealth underneath their shields, and that just comes in. Like anytime there's a shield bubble for the EDA, you can't see through it. That's it, right? And then they have this armor which it costs some alloys, right, metal stuff to repair the armor, but their units are just so hard to destroy. So defending as the EDA is quite a different story than defending as the Chosen, because the Chosen you need to build all these power generators and shields. With the EDA, you're like trying to not get hit in the first place and stuff. And with the Guard, they just regenerate, they self-repair, so you're doing it a third way as well. And they
With
have
the
jammers.
armor, how does it
Yeah.
how is it different to just having more HP?
You can't repair it, right?
can't
You could
repair
only repair
armor.
it with the drones, right? And repair, like when you repair a unit, you're building that unit again, basically, right? Like the cost to repair a unit is the same as the cost to build a unit from scratch, right? But armor is a lot cheaper, but you can't repair it unless you use the repairs mechanic, right?
Got it.
Right, and that puts like rate limits on it and stuff because you can't just use engineers. You need to use the repair bays and stuff, which like they're in your base, so you can have the mobile repair bays and stuff, but they have to be there. And if your enemy knows that they're there and he snipes them, then you don't have them anymore, right? Then you have a bad time. And also the repair drones, they're drones. So if your enemy has anti-drone weapons, he'll shoot down all the repair drones, and then like you can't repair your units anymore, right? So.
And then the shield bubbles, are they on like timer based? Like you get them taken down if you can stay safe long enough, do they come back or?
Yeah, we're looking at the timer base, but they're slight. We've done some clever maths because there are some weird cases where like if your shield bubbles down, it almost regenerates faster because it just comes back after 15 seconds. And if a shield regenerates, let's say at 10 HP a second, and it has 150 like a lot of HP, and it resets after 15 seconds, it's as if it regenerated at a much higher rate. And
Right.
so that was like a mathematical inconsistency, which people then used, right, to like stack shields really high, like in large amounts. And we've actually just resolved that. Like when a shield is on or off, it doesn't matter. It always regenerates at the same speed. And so what happens is when they come back, they don't come back at full health all the time. They just come back after a bit, right? I was actually so proud of when I like worked that out. I was like, we've just solved like this major part of the game. Like all these RTSs couldn't do it, and we did it.
That's awesome.
Right.
Threads and
Speaking
yeah.
of stuff we couldn't do,
Hmm.
are y'all gonna have coordinated attacks?
I suspected that might be coming. The answer is you don't know yet, right? Because we are looking at all these different ways of like managing your units. We're thinking, of like being able to draw a line on your units would like spread along the line, so
Right.
you
We
can
tried
just have
that one
a
as well.
front and moving, right? And so we're thinking about things like that, and so you could just like area commands, right? So you could just say get everything, or like harvest all the area like trees in here, or like just assist whatever's next to here, and like if the building is destroyed, just rebuild it automatically, right? Like in this area, go, right? And things like that. So coordinated attack, not sure, because it like that is one of those things where as a player in your head what you want for that given situation, and it's very hard to predict for the game to do the thing that you want. And so it's a case of we've got to balance this thing of like keeping the tool
let's just
simple
call
and
it
easy to
low
learn.
priority for now.
Yeah.
We had it working kind of. If you watch old demos, they may be online, I don't know. Like I actually did do coordinated attacks. But it's exactly what you said. It worked if you did them exactly the right way. And it was super easy to have them technically work, but as a player, you felt like it didn't work right. Which is why we ended up dropping in the long run, because it ended up being where it was very difficult to match up player expectation with reality. And we found that most players just did it themselves without trying to rely on the system. So we moved it, same thing, low pry that ended up being no pry eventually. I don't even remember if we shipped the code working or not, even the bad working that we had. But we did basically.
I remember it used to pop up, but I haven't seen it for a very, very long time. So
yeah, I'm sure the code's probably still in there. It even had like a coordinated attack, like text up on the screen UI, but it never worked well enough to make it, like we just determined it wasn't needed.
Maybe it was removed in Forged Alliance, I don't know. But I did used to see it. Yeah. Any other questions, Jeremy?
So I've got a couple more. Are you looking at height wise? How high up are units going? Are you looking at orbital? Are you looking at?
Yeah. So we're not currently looking into orbital. We've thought about it a bunch, and the trouble is like with other unit layers, it's underground. You can see it's on the ground. It's in the air. You can see it's in the air. It's underwater. You can see that, or on the water, or whatever. With orbit, it's like it's also in the air, and especially when you can zoom the camera all the way up,
Yep.
it's hard to tell if it's in orbit or not, and it's sort of just floating around. And we've just decided to park that one for later, right?
Yeah, it's
We
not the
did have some
biggest
cool
priority.
ideas.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we do have the under the ice layer, which is a bit different because
Oh,
we
cool.
can freeze the oceans, but if there's submarines, they can still like drive around and there's still a battle going under there, under
That's
there.
cool.
yeah,
So that's going to be a problem for us because you can't really see. I guess you're just going to be doing it all with strategic icons. The other thing we'll have that's quite cool is some units will be able to break the ice, so you'll be able to have like larger units walking out of the ice and just crashing through it, coming out. And
yeah.
shipbreaker ships that can like icebreaker ships that can just like smash a pathway through, and then potentially allowing other ships to like follow in behind that aren't icebreaker ships. So a lot of crazy stuff going on with the ice. We're like pretty
Yeah, we're
interested
also
in that.
thinking that if maybe if you nuke it or something, or you do an artillery barrage, it cracks the ice and all the tanks are on there, they fall through the cracks and stuff. So who knows what we're thinking.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I think that ice adds a lot.
Destructible terrain. I'm interested to see the destructible terrain. We made that call early on to not have it, but it was something we always kind of wished we would have done.
Yeah. So for us, it's really important to get that right and make sure it doesn't turn into a maze building exercise, because that's immediately what you try to do as a player. You're like, okay, how do I make this into a wall?
Yeah,
How do I turn this into a wall?
and that's cheesy and not fun anymore. That's lame. So the way that we've got it is you can punch big holes in the map, but that's it. You can't build a ramp anywhere you want, that type of stuff. Maybe you could like repair a bridge, stuff like that, but that's about it. And then with the freezing of the ice, that's like a map-wide decision. We were talking about other ways of doing it, like it's just a little local area, but it just becomes too hard for the player, too hard to think about. Another thing we're talking about, those holes in the map with all the sunlight coming through. We're talking about aircraft that fly over that, taking heaps of damage because it's radiation, right? But
I didn't
now,
think of that. That's cool.
Yeah,
The sun is so strong it burns the aircraft out of the sky. That was one of the ideas we were thinking about.
but now it's kind of annoying at the same time if the player's not thinking about that stuff. So it's all like micro stuff, and we're not trying to add lots of micro here. We're just trying to make a fun game. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
This looks great.
Yeah, I think the Dyson Sphere adds like a bit of a layer to the old RTS formula because it's a planet that you can control to some extent, and players haven't had that before, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the metal maps, 100%. You're inside the Dyson Sphere layers, doing one of those.
But it
Haven't
actually
got the assets
removes
for those yet.
pieces of the map, and it's eating the map away itself, and the hole's just growing.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I just made that up.
We have some crazy ideas we haven't made at all. So like for example, there's a really cool game mode which is called claustrophobia. Someone added it as a mod to Subcore, which is just your map gets smaller, so you have to like go to the middle of the map. It's like Fortnite but in RTS, right? And how cool would it be if literally the Dyson Sphere was crumbling away, right, into the sun at the edges, and you just had to fight on this thing, and then you would see these structures, these superstructures underneath, and they're just holding up that last island that you're like stuck on. Something like that, right? Or even like the opposite, where like you're playing the game and then suddenly a section of the map is just dropped in because the sphere's got to repair itself, right? No time for that, right? So but technically that's quite a challenge as well when just thinking about how should we do it, whether should we do it, and so on and so on. That's the dream.
Are y'all looking at doing a campaign?
Absolutely nice. We are. So as always, we're just trying to make sure that we make the core game first and then we make all the content for it. But we've got some really good experience with making a campaign. So we had some guys It was actually myself and the lead designer. We made an entire Seraphim campaign together. We made all these custom missions, and then one of the mods I worked on for Subcom is adding a 5th faction, right? And so obviously
nice.
they had to have a campaign, right? And it was like doing 5D chess trying to fit it into the original story, because they're not in the original story, so the whole thing is they're really secretive and nobody knows about them, and like some of the things that are attributed to other factions are actually theirs and stuff. But one of the things we're going to do is you're going to have sort of meaningful choices in the mission, so you could just say, actually, I'm just going to do this other thing, I don't care what you say. And then the mission remembers that, and not only that mission, but the subsequent missions as well. They actually track these decisions that you make. And we've actually got that working before, and like we've got all these plans of like all the things you could do, and then that would affect like how the campaign develops, and like, you know, so like you could like really annoy some of your superiors, right? And then they just don't send you more reinforcements the next mission or something, right? But like, you know, you might do it at the cost of like, so we had like we were just talking a couple of weeks ago, I think, about an idea where, you know, you're the EDA, right? You're these guys, and you're being attacked by the guard, and you need to evacuate this whole thing. And sort of in the lore, the idea is that the EDA transports these commanders and other things via these giant rail guns. They like shoot them across the sphere, and then they land somewhere else, right? Because that's the fastest way to get there. And, you know, you have to evacuate all of these things because the guard are coming and they're about to like stomp all over this place. It's just endless, right? And, you know, you've got all the people you've got to evacuate, and you've got materials. And if you start evacuating the materials first, you get more war effort, but people kind of remember that you didn't evacuate them first. You prioritize the supplies, right? So, and then there's all these things that you have to go out, and there's like not enough pods in the railgun to get everything out. So you either got to build your own, or you got to like fly them over from the other side of the map, because that was where the store is and stuff. And there's all these crazy things happening. And, you know, you get told what to do, but you can just ignore it, right? You can just say, you know, there's a giant like tier 4 unit coming, right? And, you know, they say, get out, right? Get out right now. But if you kill it, they say, how did you even do that? I don't even know. Like, what are you, like, I don't even care anymore. Do what you want, right? And so, and the next time they remember that and stuff like that. So we got all these things. In short, we're gonna have the best campaign ever, and you're gonna be able to play it co-op with your friends. Like you'll have
Best
3
campaign
people.
ever. It's in.
Yeah.
It is. You're held to it now. Has to be.
Yeah. I'm in for it now. Yeah, but yeah. So we've actually one thing that Forge Alliance did is we converted the single player campaign into a co-op campaign, so you can play it with 3
That's so
people
cool.
and stuff. And you know,
That's cool.
we really got that down. So like, you know, in some of the missions, the custom missions we added, right? If you replay the mission, the attacks are different. Like it's different. It's not the same. You have a giant air assault, and then the next time it's ships, right? Like there's no aircraft coming, it's ships. And then the third time it's like land units, and then it's air again. And you don't know what is going to happen, because these things are sort of randomized, and it adapts to what you do. Yeah, and like if there's more players, it knows that, and it sees how well you're doing, and it sends more units, because it's like, yeah, there's 4 players, right?
Yeah, quite
So, yeah.
cool. So lots and lots of additions to the standard campaign going on there.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. And the fact you're even doing one is great.
Yeah, well, we want to do one. That's like with like our sort of business model, kind of, you know, making sure we deliver the game, right? Everything, because we don't know how much money we have to stretch it, like how far that's going to go. So we're focusing on the main game, and then we'll release that. And if we don't have enough money, we'll do the campaign after the release or something, or an early access. If we do have enough money, we'll do the campaign right away and stuff like that, right? So
it's a tough choice. I mean, I
indie
remember
life is a tough life.
I mean, yeah, it is. When we did it,
Yeah.
it was, I think we had stats saying it was like 12% or less people played multiplayer.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's similar for us. Similar for us. Like 50 to 70% play single player.
Us, the campaign has to be great, right? But then, like, in the back of our heads, we also knew people are still playing Forged Alliance forever. They're not playing it because the campaign was great. They're playing it because multiplayer.
That's right.
So, you know, the first 3 years, you mostly have single player. The next 15 years, you hopefully have people playing multiplayer. So it's an interesting balance you have to keep.
It's a balance, but there's also different flavors of multiplayer. So according to FAF stats, because, you know, I can just query these things from the server. 50 to 70% of player games on FAF, which is a multiplayer client, they're single player games, right? And that's because you play against the AI, right? And you play like, and you know, co-op campaign, or like that's the game mode, it gets about 10% of all the player base consistently.
That's awesome.
Like 10% of all games played are campaign games on an online client, right? Because so there's a bias, there's a selection effect. The multiplayer heavy player bases on FAF, because those guys, the guys who are only single player, don't even care about that, right? But even there, it's like a big chunk. So it's like it's a backbone of all these things, and like, you know, comp stomps, right? Like 2 versus 8, right? 2 players versus 8 computers,
just destroy,
right? Like the most popular maps, right, are like survival maps, right? Which is where you need to build. You're playing alone or as a team, and there's just units spawning on the edge, just like tower defense, right?
Cool.
But right, the most popular maps is like, I was just checking this the other day. It's like the 3rd most popular map on the servers, right? It's a survival map, and then you know, there's versions of that map, so you can see it. It's like out of the top 30 places, it takes 5 of the top 30 places are survival maps. Very important.
So, but the short version is we're delivering a multiplayer game first, because that's kind of like the real game. We're like players, number one. We want to actually play it. But all these other things are really high on the to-do list. People want them. We want to give it to them. Maybe Kickstarter stretch goals. They'll just make a very early appearance. We do know lots of people want that stuff, so we'll just have a better Kickstarter by providing it really early, I think.
This is awesome, guys. You the passion is coming through, obvious. You know more about this genre than probably we did when we made Supreme Commander at this point. Forge Alliance Forever has continued to be awesome and make the game better and better. I'm excited to see what you'll do with this one, because everything I've seen here looks pretty damn amazing.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. If it doubted you most about Sanctuary?
What I have to say, honestly, the maps. We did a lot of work on trying to get a look and feel for Supreme Commander. And y'all, it feels like y'all used that as a springboard to where when I look at this, like immediately it leapt out. It felt like you started a long time ago with Supreme Commander and just ran with it. Like this infinite view, the amount of trees you've got here, the fact that you've got new technology that you're able to make use of. It's on a Dyson sphere. You've got destructible terrain. Honestly, your environments and what y'all are planning to do with them has me the most excited to see what it does to the subgenre. Favorite faction. Looking at the pictures, I said it was Chosen. When you started talking about the differentiating factors of the factions, it's EDA, I think, at this point. Like if you told me day one, jump in and pick a faction, here's the differences between them, I think EDA fits my play style better.
Good,
I want it to be Chosen. Yeah, I like the armor.
Good man. I designed that faction, so yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I want it to be Chosen, but I think play style wise, I think my first go-to would be EDA.
Right.
Would I describe Sanctuary? I would describe it as evolution of the macro RTS subgenre that started with Total Annihilation, designed and developed by the people with the passion to have kept it alive over the last decade or more. I can tell you this subgenre, like every 7 years, a new one of these games can come out and it will sell somewhere around 1 million units. This is a subgenre that is entirely underserved. It scares most developers just because the technological needs, but as you were seeing with the new technology, it's becoming easier to make. You're not having to custom make engines. The timing's good. There's a good chance you'll make a crap ton of money, honestly, for a small team.
Okay. Look, thank you very much for all of your answers and patience and hanging out with us, and
guys,
this helps us a lot.
I'm just excited to see people this excited about this genre.
Well, glad you like it. We're working hard on this stuff.
I am excited to play it.
Yeah, cool.
I'm glad
Oh,
I'm not having to solve these problems right now.
yeah,
Ready to play it once you have them solved.
yeah. It's all right.
Fantastic. Pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for
And-
making the best game ever. How about that?
Yeah,
Well, now
well
you
done.
are, right?
Not yet.
Well, we haven't
All you
made
gotta
it
do is
yet.
one up it. Just
Oh
gotta one
yeah.
up it. I still don't know that we won up to Total Annihilation, I'll be honest.
I think you,
But-
honestly, well, in my humble opinion,
But we
I think you
tried.
guys have. I think you guys have.
Awesome. That was great. Thank you very much, Jeremy, and good luck with everything. Take care.
Yeah, no, thank y'all. I'm excited. Like I said, I can't wait to play this. It's looking great.